No matter what kind of car you drive, if it takes gas, notice I am leaving out the pre-I, you eventually have to fill it up. And that begs a question: when and where? One of mine is in here too. Find it? As I showed in a previous video that ways to save money, saving on gas turned out to be one of the ones at the top of the list. Easily $300, $400, $500 a year. It's worth the effort to figure it out. In starting, we got a first premise that there is a gas station that's cheaper. You know, it's often not right off the freeway off-ramp because people's inelasticity is such that they typically charge higher at the off-ramp, especially if you're about to run out of gas. And we are going to do this, say, in dollars per gallon. You know, the Europeans actually invert that in euros divided into the number of liters of petrol. But that's a nuance that I'll leave it to you, especially if you're European. First thing we got to observe, the gas station has to be a little bit out of your way. If it happens to be along your regular route, you'll observe it and you'll stop there anyhow, in which case this whole discussion is just plain moot. Let's start off with, you know the size of your gas tank, because you'll do fill-ups, I trust, and you probably know the current price, and maybe you know or have a good guess as to what the cheaper price is, so that'll give you the total cost of savings on a fill-up. And let's presume it's a round trip, so it's twice the distance, and you can figure that out because you're going to do a computation of the mileage and the dollars per mile. Notice we got to do a conversion if we need dollars per mile. And that's not hard because you know the dollar per gallon and you know your mileage per gallon. And if you divide the latter into the former, the gallons cancel and you get dollars per mile. Here's an example: $4 a gallon, and you drive 20 miles per gallon. You divide the 20 into $4, you get 20 cents a mile. So thus we examine the inequality of the amount of savings, tank size times the difference of the price savings, whether it's greater than twice the distance, work with me here, of the cost per mile, and if it's so, then it's worth the effort. And of course, there's more. And we can solve this inequality such that we can find the distance, which is the price savings, divided by that cost of travel per mile. And we're dividing by 2 because, you know, it's a round trip. Okay, here's a full-blown example. We got a gas tank holds 16 gallons. Gas station charges, let's say, $4.20 a gallon, and the farther one away charges only $4. 20 cents a gallon savings. Doesn't sound like much, does it? Well, thus a fill-up would cost $67.20 versus $64 at the gas station 2 miles away. The costs, we're going to do everything. First of all, for the gas itself, $4 a gallon, 20 miles per gallon, that's 20 cents a mile. Now let's amortize, that is, spread out the cost of the car. Where do we get 20 cents a mile in that case? We purchased it, let's say, for $24,000. It's going to last 10 years because I'm a real cheap kind of SOB, and I don't mean school of business. And driving at, say, 12,000 miles per year, dividing all this through, you get about 20 cents a mile for just the cost of the car spread across time. Oh, and now let's not forget about our time and effort. Well, let's say you'd pay yourself $10 an hour to go get gas, and you go 25 miles an hour. It's on the street, you know. Turns out that's another 40 cents a mile. Kind of a little check here. We got 20 cents for the gas itself, 20 cents for the amortization of the car, and another 40 cents for your time and effort. Notice here in this example, your time and effort is about half the whole mishigas. So we put this all together, and we got 80 cents a mile. That's 20 cents for the gas itself, another 20 cents for the ownership of the car, and another 40 cents for your time and effort. Plugging that in our inequality, turns out you would go up to 2 miles away. Of course, if you went the full 2, you would break even, and what's the point of that? So you're saying right about here, but does that apply to me? I got different examples. Okay, I made a little table. Cars purchased for 24 grand, middle column. 36 grand, right-hand column, held for 10 years. You're saying, but I got a used car. Guess what? It's still going to work. So you cut those values in half, you cut the time in half, but they're still the same respective columns. Okay? Okay. We're going to use, say, $4.20 a gallon versus 4. Okay, prices may be different, but the differential is still okay. Let's say we got a 16-gallon tank. Work with me here. We drive some 12,000 miles per year. Here we're going to exclude time. And as a rough rule of thumb, it seemed like time was about half of it. So let's look at the table in detail. First of all, remember these are for round trips. So if you wanted to make this really effective, meaning like, getting halfway there, you cut these values in half. So let's see. You got 16 miles a gallon. And you got a pretty expensive car. Notice it's not quite linear. And indeed, it makes sense. If the car's more expensive, you got to do a little something closer in. Let's double the mileage. Go from 16 to 32. Again, notice it's not linear. So let's see if the mileage does increase on your car. You can go further. That makes a lot of sense. So let's see. Let's make it 20 miles a gallon, and 24,000 is the cost of the car. Yep, that's that 4 miles. Let's say you get a little bit better mileage. You got a more expensive car. Turns out it's actually a little bit shorter at 3.6. Let's look at the extremities. You only get 16 miles to a gallon. You got a big, expensive 36 grand car. You'd go only about 2.9, some 3 miles. Versus, let's say you go 36 miles to a gallon, a little bit cheaper car, 24 grand, or you bought it used for 12 and you got 5 years left, and you could go up to 5 miles. And again, be reminded, that's the break-even point. Something to think about. And remember, these numbers add up. You could easily save $300, $400, $500, $600, $700 a year just on buying cheaper gas. Oh, and don't forget those discounts, from the grocery store, from the discount cards with the rebates. Again, Dr. C helping you save your money.